Hey everyone, Eric here. In this video, we're checking out the full lineup of Does It Doom pedals. So like we said in the intro, we're checking out the full lineup of Does It Doom pedals. Before we get into the pedals, let's go over the signal chain. I'm gonna be all sorts of Does It Doomed up right now because we're using a Woodwright Warlord lefty in Silverburst, and then we're running into the pedals and then out to a Marshall DSL-20 into the aux, and then that's how we're getting our signal into the computer. So first up, we have the Fuzzcoven. Now the Fuzzcoven is a straightforward fuzz pedal, and it's based around the color sound fuzz or the fuzz face. And that gives us the really dynamic control with our volume, as well as just a super saturated singing fuzz. This is a one knob pedal, and that one control lets us introduce more or less fuzz. So with the control all the way down, we're not gonna get anything. And as we start to increase it, we get more fuzz and more fuzz and more fuzz. And like we said before, you get a really dynamic response from turning the volume on your guitar down. So let's hear how that sounds. Now let's hear how the Fuzzcoven sounds on bass. Here's a clean signal. Next up, we have the Hypercoven, which is an analog octave up, kind of like a green ringer. This is also another pedal with one control, and that control lets us blend in however much octave we want. So if we have the octave control all the way down, when we kick on the pedal, we're only gonna get clean signal. And as we start to turn up the octave control, we're blending in more and more of that glitchy kind of analog octave up. Now, of course, that effect is very cool on its own, but the real fun of the Hypercoven is when you stack it with other pedals. So let's go ahead and hear how the Hypercoven sounds stacked into the front of the Fuzzcoven. Here's the Fuzzcoven by itself. Now let's kick on the Hypercoven. Now we have to hear that combo on bass. Let's go ahead and kick on the Hypercoven first. Now the Fuzzcoven. Now we've come to the Doomcaster. The Doomcaster is another one knob pedal. It's a very straightforward effect. It is a boost. It's a MOSFET boost technically. And what we can do is we can boost into the front of an amp, we can boost into the front of other pedals, or we can use the Doomcaster after other pedals to attenuate the sound or match the volume, essentially providing a master volume for whatever's before it. Let's hear how the Doomcaster sounds going from minimum to maximum. Now with the control all the way down, we're not going to get any signal. Now let's go ahead and hear how the Doomcaster sounds on bass. One thing to listen for is really how the Doomcaster can help your instrument's voice come through when it's on. It doesn't really color your sound too much. It gives it a little bit of warmth and, again, just that extra push. Continuing on the trend, the Sabbathi is another one knob pedal, and it is based on mode 2 of the FZ2 Hyperfuzz from Boss. The knob on the pedal is labeled fuzz, but it actually controls the output volume, so you can really fine tune the volume and match it to other pedals however you'd like. So now for the Sabbathi on bass. Next up is the Doomsaw, another one knob pedal, and the Doomsaw is based on the HM2, the classic Swedish death metal chainsaw sound. What we have is one control for gain, and then inside the pedal, all of the EQs that you would find on the original pedal are maxed out, so we get nothing but that grindy chainsaw sound. And now we've got to turn the bass into a chainsaw, of course. Next up, we have the Walpurgis, another one knob pedal, but this time we're actually emulating a pedal going into an amp to replicate a sound. What we have in the Walpurgis is a treble boost going into a Laney supergroup, and that gives us the sound of the riff god Tony Iommi. With the control at minimum, we're only getting the sound of the Laney supergroup, and as we start to increase the control, we're starting to send more and more of that treble boost into the front. So essentially what we have is, at minimum, we get more of a vintage sound, and then at maximum, we get more of a modern sound. Let's go ahead and hear how it sounds when we change from the bridge pickup to the neck pickup. Now, of course, Tony's rig was way different than Giza's rig, but let's go ahead and run bass through the Walpurgis. Now we've come to the Aghartha, which is another pedal with a single knob, but it's meant to emulate a pedal and an amp to get a specific sound. Now this one is going for that sun sound. So what we have in the Aghartha is a rat into an emulated Model T. Our one knob controls how much rat we're sending into the amp. So with the control on minimum, we're only getting the sound of the cranked Model T. As we start to increase the control, we're sending more and more of that rat signal into the front of that Model T. Now let's go ahead and run the bass through the Aghartha. Next up we have the Giza. I'm going to stay on bass because this is, again, a single knob pedal meant to capture the sound of a full rig. So we have a pedal, actually two pedals, into an amp. And we're going after the sound of Al Cisneros from the band Ohm. And specifically the sound and setup from the Live at Amoeba Records set that they did. You can find it on YouTube. What Al did was run multiple signals into different pedals and different amps. So the Giza is based around the Mad Amp GT120, which is the amp that Al used. So we have the emulation of the GT120. Now once we start to increase the control, we're blending in a parallel blend of three different signals, one of which is a DoD 250, the other is a Boss DS1, and then a clean blend. So what we have is our signal being copied three times, one run through a 250, one run through a DS1, and then a clean signal. We're going into the front of that Mad Amp, and we can choose how much of that blend of the parallel signals we want by the control. So at minimum, we're only getting the Mad Amp sound. I'm sure the bass players out there are gonna get a kick out of me saying, so now let's hear what the Giza sounds like on guitar. And now we've come to the Elder God, the first pedal in the Does It Doom line to have more than one control. The Elder God is a parallel blend of two different fuzz circuits. So one side we have a silicon fuzz face circuit, and on the other side we have a low pass big muff. So that's essentially a big muff with the tone turned all the way down. We have controls for output volume right here on the left, and on the right hand side we have the control for the amount of fuzz. If we turn it down all the way, we're not going to get any signal at all. As we turn it up, we're going to get more fuzz. And the middle control on the pedal lets us blend between the two different circuits. With the control all the way down, we only have the silicon fuzz phase circuit. And as we turn it up, we're blending in more and more of that low pass big muff until all the way at max, we're only getting the low pass big muff. So let's hear how that sounds going from only fuzz phase to only big muff. Now let's go ahead and run the bass through the Elder God and see how it sounds when we blend from that silicon fuzz face all the way over to the big muff. Next up, and currently the newest addition to the Does It Doom lineup of pedals, is the Baghdad. The Baghdad, again, is another pedal with multiple controls, and it's meant to emulate or recreate the sound of a specific rig. And this time, we're going after the rig of Matt Pike in the early days of High on Fire. And Matt's rig back then was a Soldano SP77 preamp run into the front of a Mad Amp GT120. So inside the Baghdad, we have a recreation of the SP77 into an emulation of a Mad Amp GT120 with simplified controls. Now on the bottom left, we have the overall output volume, so we can make it as loud or as quiet as we want. And then next to the volume control, we have the gain control, and that is the gain inside the Soldano SP77 circuit. At lower settings, we're gonna get cleaner sounds. As we turn it up, we're gonna get more distorted sounds. On the top row of the pedal lives the EQ for the Soldano preamp section of the pedal. We have a 4-band EQ, so we have treble, middle, bass, and presence. So we can really fine-tune our sound however we want. So if we want a more full sound, we can turn up the bass. Conversely, if we want a thinner sound, we can turn down the bass. We can mid-scoop the pedal by turning the mids down and turning the bass and treble up a little bit. We can switch to the neck humbucker, and we can emphasize the clarity and the high end by turning up the presence and the treble. Finally, we've come to the depth and drive control. With the drive control at minimum, we're taking the mad amp section of the circuit out completely, and we're left with only the SP77 recreation. As we turn the drive up, we're introducing more and more of that mad amp characteristic. And the depth knob controls a high pass filter on the mad amp section of the circuit. So with the depth down all the way, we're cutting out a lot of low end. So we get a tighter response and a more articulate sound overall. As we turn the depth up, we're going to introduce more low end in the mad amp side of the circuit to get more of that fuzzy, blown out sound that mad amps are known for. Now let's go ahead and run the bass through the Baghdad. Let's turn up the gain on the SP77, maybe bring out a little bit of low end on the preamp, maybe some mids too, and then we're gonna crank the depth and set the drive maybe 75%. Let's hear how that sounds. So if you stayed to the end of the video, I really appreciate it. I hope you dug it. If you want to learn more about any of these pedals or purchase them, I'll leave a link to the Does It Doom website in the description below. And while you're down there, if you're looking for any other sort of music gear, I have affiliate links to Sweetwater, Reverb, and Amazon. And what that does is it takes you directly to those sites or a product. It lets that website know that I sent you. And then if you buy anything through those links, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but I'll get a small commission from that purchase. Again, it saves you time, it doesn't cost you anything extra, and it's a great way to help support the channel if you want to do so. I also want to send a huge thank you to my Patreon fam, my supporters over on Patreon. Y'all are the best. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I hope you're doing well out there. I hope you're staying safe, and I hope you're taking care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.